expressing appreciation for one person every day. And the reason I like this so much is because it pulls in the number one predictor of happiness, and that's our human relationships. Even the closest relationships can fade over time. And when we're mindful about expressing our gratitude and letting those people know how much they mean to us, it helps to foster and just nurture those very special relationships. So every day being intentional about just picking one person in a way that feels comfortable for you, that you have the time for that day.
I have Dr. Peggy DeLong here today on the podcast, and she is known as the Gratitude Psychologist. And I cannot wait for her to share more of her incredible knowledge and expertise around this concept of cultivating gratitude in our day-to-day and what that really looks like. So Dr. Peggy, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Erin. Pleasure to be here.
I am just elated to hear more of your story and more of your expertise. You know, we talked a little bit about this before we hit record today, but I started this podcast because I have this really deep heart and advocacy around mental health and around this idea of working on our mindset and how we always have to be mindful of what our thoughts do and what they actually can create in our life. So I would love for you to start with this concept of gratitude. Like I just said, you're the gratitude psychologist. I absolutely love that. Talk a little bit about how you define gratitude and what that really is.
Sure, I define gratitude as being in a state of appreciation for things that are tangible and intangible, and that you're in such a state of appreciation that you want to return kindness. I believe that that's what it's all about, returning kindness, sharing what we're grateful for, whether saying it out loud so that another person can benefit, or expressing our gratitude for the people in our lives and the relationships that mean a lot to us.
It's so good. And just an important reminder for us, right, of the importance of really making sure that we're always thinking through that process of our life. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about how did you discover the power of gratitude for yourself? Like, what did that journey look like? And share a little more about that with us.
Well, it wasn't an easy journey. I always say that I was an ungrateful young adult. I was an ungrateful child. It took tragedy in my life to discover the power of gratitude for myself. It existed. Lots of people were grateful, but not me. And it took tragedy. I was 26 years old. I was engaged to a wonderful man. I was applying to graduate schools and in the midst of interviewing for my doctoral program that I had worked so hard my whole life. And what appeared to be literally overnight, about 3 months into our engagement, my fiance developed a lump on the side of his neck. And I just had a terrible feeling that I would be living my life without him. And unfortunately, he was diagnosed with a very aggressive form of cancer, and he passed away 7 months later. And it was in those last days of his life when the doctors told me that there was nothing left that they could do for him and that he was going to die. That's when I found gratitude. And I found it in a simple cup of hazelnut coffee, of all things.
Wow.
Every day was so unpredictable. I didn't know if he'd be able to speak my name that day. I didn't know if he'd be able to open his eyes that day. Every day was so unpredictable. I didn't know if he was going to die that day. The one thing that I could depend on that was predictable, that brought me comfort, was that every day after the visitors left at 8 p.m. and I was allowed to stay as his fiance, I would get myself a cup of hazelnut coffee. Now, my 26-year-old self had no idea why that cup was so powerful. Now, I would wrap my hands around the styrofoam cup. It brought me comfort, that warmth. The aroma of hazelnut is very strong, so it kind of permeated his hospital room. It just kind of reminded me of being home. Then, in hindsight, now I understand that what I was doing was practicing gratitude for something so simple yet predictable during the worst time of my life of unpredictability. So that I discovered it for myself on my worst days. So it's really become my mission to teach people, not to wait for your good days. Gratitude is truly most powerful on your worst day.
Yeah, it really is. And I love how you're bringing that reminder to the forefront, because it can feel hard to actually express or find ways to show gratitude for your life or to dig into something that you're grateful for on those harder days. What a powerful story. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it's so relatable for all of us, because we all have some level of adversity and tragedy that we've likely experienced in some way. And so learning how to stay grounded in gratitude is really where it's at, especially for our mindset. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about maybe some simple exercises or things people can really do in order to get into that simplistic thinking of practicing gratitude and feeling grateful.
Sure. My favorite is expressing appreciation for one person every day. And the reason I like this so much is because it pulls in the number one predictor of happiness, and that's our human relationships. Even the closest relationships can fade over time. And when we're mindful about expressing our gratitude and letting those people know how much they mean to us, it helps to foster and just nurture those very special relationships. So every day being intentional about just picking one person in a way that feels comfortable for you, that you have the time for that day. So if it's a super busy day, you might only have 30 seconds to send off a heartfelt text. If you have more time, my favorite method is actually writing a handwritten gratitude letter. And there's lots of science and research studies about the power of a gratitude letter. It actually helps the person writing the letter boost a mood and mental health more than the recipient. So it's wonderful for the recipient to get this nice letter in the mail, but truly for yourself, it's one of the easiest things that you can do if you're having a down day to boost your mood by writing a gratitude letter. It just might be the only 10 minutes of your day that has no negativity. So, when we think about who we're grateful for and why, it inspires plenty of positive thoughts. But the researchers found that what made these letters so powerful was also the absence of negativity. Because
Yeah.
when you're sitting down and writing that letter, you're not thinking anything negative. There's no room for a negative thought.
I love that. I want to know where snail mail went, right? Like I want to know how we implement that more and more and more, because I can totally relate to that, especially from the mindset and mental health side. Like it really does fill your cup when you're writing that out and expressing that gratitude, or that you're thinking of someone or for some other reason. Like it's just so incredibly powerful. So I love that you kind of share that as a practice, because I think it's often overlooked, right? Yeah.
Very much so. And even another method on a busy day is to start your day with an email of appreciation. One study found that about 80% of people hold their breath when they begin the workday and open up the computer and look at email. We just anticipate all of that work coming our way, and 80% of people actually held their breath. Now that is not a health promoting activity, so
Yeah.
we can counteract that by intentionally sending off an email of appreciation to somebody. And very simple. I'm thinking about you. I'm grateful for having you in my life. It doesn't need to be long and lengthy and complicated. Really simple, just to let somebody know you help your start your workday with a positive path.
That's so good and so true. Like I can feel myself doing that when I anticipate what my day is going to look like, what's going to happen when I open up all my messages, or I look at what's, on the agenda for the day. I do sometimes feel like that tense, I'm unsure, I don't know how to approach this energy. And if I opened up my email, or if I went to my mailbox and got a letter first thing in the morning from somebody sharing appreciation, like I have no doubt that would drastically change mood, energy, and just how I feel. And so I love that you're talking about that as a practice. Dr. Peggy, I'd love to move into talking a little bit more about kind of the mental health side, the research, and what things like figuring out how to stay grounded in gratitude really does for our mental health. Like, talk a little bit about what that looks like.
Sure. Really, two things I'd love to highlight. The first is that when we think about what we're grateful for, automatically serotonin and dopamine are released in our brains, those neurotransmitters that elevate mood and make us feel good. That happens immediately. And it doesn't need to be something huge. For me, it was hazelnut coffee. Sometimes I look out at my lawn and I look at the green in a blade of grass and I appreciate that color. So intentionally keep it simple. That happens right away. The other takes more time, is that when we practice gratitude on a regular basis, we are truly forming new neural pathways in our brains to be more positive thinkers. That's why people who consider themselves Pessimists can actually become low-level optimists simply through a daily gratitude practice of at least 21 days or a little bit more. We can change the brain structure. It's truly amazing what gratitude does for us. And I love how the science backs this up, that we can see now with advances in technology and functional MRIs that those new neural pathways are being formed to be a more positive thinker. And that's crucial for mental health. It's so connected to mental health to have a positive mindset.
Yes, it is. And something that, I've learned firsthand in my own life. And I think we all learn probably to a degree at in some season or through a tragedy or something like that, like really the importance of our mindset and how, when we're focusing on the good and we're finding ways to feel grateful or to express gratitude, that it really does change how we feel. And the science is there. The science backs it up. What actually happens in the brain when we're trying to have positive thoughts and stick to positive thoughts and really make sure that we're practicing that as consistently as possible. That's so powerful. And I super appreciate that. Yeah.
And
So
and it's important also because we need to counteract what I call the unkind mind, that unfortunately our default mode is not in our favor. Just lots of negative thinking going on, negativity bias, confirmation bias, comparing ourselves to other people, taking things personally. Like there's lots going on during the day that can bring us down with our thoughts.
yeah.
And in my experience, being a therapist for 30 years, I find gratitude to be the quickest and most effective way to change that mindset, to going from negative thinking to positive thinking.
Yeah. And I love how you're just speaking about kind of how this affects every aspect of our life and how we really need to think about like how our thoughts are essentially changing our well-being and how it doesn't really afford us the opportunity to really see clearly or to show up in our life the way we maybe want to or deserve to, etc. I would love for you to talk a little bit about, like, in your work and the people that you speak to, if someone is really struggling with this idea of changing their thought patterns, digging into positive psychology, finding ways to really stay grounded in gratitude, and they can't connect the dots. How do you help them? How do you coach them? What do you help encourage them to start to do?
The first is to keep it simple.
Yeah.
And so often we discount the simple, and it is effective. Our brains don't care whether you're thinking about, like I gave the example of the green of a blade of grass. My brain does not care whether I'm feeling gratitude for that simplicity or that I was able to pay my mortgage this month, which is a much bigger thing. Um,
Right.
my brain doesn't care. So when you're intentionally encouraging yourself to find and seek out those simple things, they're available every day. And it's just simply more opportunity for feeling good throughout the day. And when you do it on a regular basis, you will find more and more things that make you feel good, that you appreciate, things that you may have taken for granted in the past that now you're connecting to your life. What I also love about gratitude is it simply helps us be more present in our lives. Rather than reflecting on the past, which can sometimes lead to regret and depression, or thought traveling to the future, which is often associated with worry and stress, it keeps us in the present moment by thinking about what we've got going on in this very moment that we're grateful for.
Yeah. If someone, so I want to kind of speak to the person that's listening to this who maybe is identifying that they have some level of negative thought patterns or are trying to kind of break that process and move into more of this positive psychology and shifting their mindset. Is there like a tip, a trick, a tool you give someone who feels like they can't make that switch?
One suggestion is to make sure you believe what you're telling yourself. Otherwise, the brain is going to resist. So, a lot of times when people are experiencing financial struggles, one example, if they're trying to focus on the positive, is they might be telling themselves something that's not true, and then the brain is going to resist that. So, I would, even if it's neutral, it's better than negative. So that would be one of my top recommendations. Just make sure that what you're telling yourself you believe to be true,
Yeah.
because sometimes it backfires when you're trying to foster that positivity if you don't believe it. So if it's too much of a jump to go from negative to positive, then go from negative to neutral.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you use any kind of visualization besides like maybe looking out into your environment? I'm curious if you have any visualization tools or like quick reminders to help your brain continue to make those switches too.
Visual reminders can really be anything beautiful. There's so much research also about the power of nature, even photographs and things that if we're not actually in nature, that when we look at beautiful photos, that can inspire awe. And awe is another form of making us feel good. And it helps to diminish the negative thinking. It really targets the part of our brain that's responsible for negative thinking. So when we see awe, it like temporarily suspends any negative thoughts that we've got going on. And that can happen when you're out hiking in nature. It can happen while you're just sitting on a rock listening to a babbling brook, or if you're at your desk and just have something beautiful to look at, whether it's on the computer or a photo on your desk.
So good. And so, I mean, something that even I'm trying to continue to make sure that I'm instilling in my day to day, because sometimes, we get into this tunnel vision of being connected and doing the work. If we work from home or in an office, et cetera, like we can kind of forget the importance of having those visual breaks or those ways to get us grounded into some sort of thought process outside of what we're really doing in our day-to-day moments. And so I just appreciate you kind of sharing more of that perspective, because it's helpful for me to also continue to learn. And I know that the people listening to this are also going to learn, like, what are things they can do to start to help their brain get into this place of continually getting into that positive headspace. Dr. Peggy, I'd love for you to move a little bit more into talking about your peace method, or the prioritized peace method. I know this is part of what you teach and what you help people start to understand for lifelong well-being. So can you share a little bit more about what that is and what are the 5 essential components to it?
Yes. So the prioritized peace method is basically, I've taken my 30 years in the mental health field and pulled mostly what brings people pain and then what to do about it, and came up with the acronym PEACE. P stands for positivity, E for exercise, A for achievement, C connection, and E empathy. And a lot of those might not be, or some of those might not be in the way that you're thinking about. For example, A for achievement. I don't necessarily mean going out and achieving lots of things every day. In fact, for the high achiever, it might include some rewiring of your brain about what achievement is, and connecting more to the joy and the process rather than the ultimate outcome, so that you're constantly, if you're a high achiever, your self-worth can become attached to the outcome. And then you're constantly striving to achieve more and more, driving yourself crazy. Where if you connect to the present, and I call it the 3 P's: being present, purposeful, and pleasure. When those 3 P's are involved in our achievements, it just translates to more positive mental health.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you're speaking about, with A specifically, finding a way to enjoy the journey and the process. Because that, I know, is a real hurdle for busy women and high achieving women and people that are working towards different things in their life, right? And this whole concept of learning how to embrace and enjoy the journey is one of the greatest mindset gifts you can really give yourself, because it just changes the energy of how you feel in your day-to-day life. So I love that acronym, and I love that you're speaking about, thinking about these different buckets and thinking about how do you really get into this place of prioritizing your peace and what that does for your mental and emotional well-being. Let's kind of move into talking a little bit more about mental health in general. We talked a little bit about when we started recording today, what is mental health and how we're both passionate about it, and kind of connecting a little bit more on it. So I'd love for your perspective on, why do you feel like there are so many people suffering right now?
I have a couple theories about that. I think part of it is we have lost human connection,
Yeah.
and really deep, authentic connection. Social media and technology are wonderful, but unfortunately, it has taken out some human components.
Yeah.
I just really recognized the other day when I went to the pharmacy that there wasn't even an option to check out with a person. It was all machines.
Yeah.
And there's some wonderful research about this. Nick Epley, who studied the University of Chicago and looked at people on a train, and they all did not want to talk to each other. But then when they were encouraged to do so, and they were told, to strike up a conversation with strangers on the train, they reported more happiness.
Yeah.
And then they asked the people who were talked to that they thought maybe those people were bothered and they didn't really want to talk. But the people that they talked to reported more happiness.
Wow.
So often machines have replaced people, and we're just sticking to ourselves. And unfortunately, it has really contributed to loneliness. So that's part of why I have incorporated human connection into both my teachings about gratitude, as well as the prioritized peace method. The C is for connection. And I
Yeah.
love going over simple ways that we can connect with people every day. So I really believe that that is part of why people are struggling, especially when the research shows us that it's the number one predictor of happiness. So when we're working on it, and it doesn't take much, we feel better. And then unfortunately, when we're not, when it slides, we feel more lonely. And then I believe the second theory is the avoidance of emotional pain, that unfortunately that comes back to hurt us in the long run. So
Yeah.
temporarily, we don't want to feel pain. We don't want to feel grief. It's tough, but it doesn't go away. We can't heal what we don't feel. So when we ignore it, numb ourselves, we unfortunately then become numb to the fullness of joy. I've used the analogy of having surgery. So if you're having surgery and you have general anesthesia, you don't get to pick and choose what body parts go numb. Everything goes numb.
Yeah.
Same thing with our feelings. When we numb ourselves to grief, we are also unwittingly numbing ourselves to the fullness of joy.
Yeah.
So it might sound odd, but in the P section of my positivity, prioritized peace, where the P stands for positivity, part of that positivity, I call it the positive mindset grid. There's actually four components, and one of those components is feeling emotional pain. And I purposefully avoid the word negative. I don't believe my personal opinion is there's no such thing as a negative emotion. It's just an emotion, but it's painful. So part of developing a positive mindset is not ignoring that emotional pain and finding ways that work for you to heal and process that emotional pain.
Yeah. And a good reminder for all of us, we have to figure out ways to really heal that emotional pain. And I know from the work I do, and really what I've learned in my own life as well, like when you're not addressing some of that invisibility that we also manage in our health journey, like it will show up in your life in some capacity, most often physically in some way. And it's just such an important piece to our overall happiness and well-being. And I just so appreciate you like naming those things and then giving people permission to say like this is something that we need to focus on in order to stay in this positive headspace and in order to continue to give ourselves the space to get into this gratitude practice, which is so important for our overall happiness. So incredibly powerful, my friend. I would love for you to talk a little bit about what do you feel like people maybe get wrong when they're trying to improve their mental health, and maybe they're putting some things together, but for some reason they're missing the mark.
I believe that many people feel that everything needs to be huge. So, for example, if we're talking about exercise, that you need to go hike 5 miles, so then you might not have the time or energy, so you just don't do it. Where 10 minutes of walking has tremendous benefits. I think we have become a society that discounts the simple. So I love bringing the simple to life, going for that simple 10-minute walk, the simple text to send to somebody, all of the negative thoughts that we might be telling ourselves that it doesn't matter. So then we just don't do it because it's too simple. So I want to encourage people that the simple matters,
Yeah.
including talking to complete strangers. I believe there's no such thing as small talk, that every connection matters, including with complete strangers. So it matters with our partners, connection with our friends matter, our family, our colleagues, but complete strangers and acquaintances matter too. And the more that we can connect when we're out and about running our errands, it makes us feel seen, connected to our communities and the world, which contributes to mental health. So overall, my answer would be to pay attention to the simple things, highlight the simple things.
Yeah, I love that you keep sharing like simple steps, like small visuals, small realizations. It doesn't need to be this massive overhaul of this huge process because first of all, that's not sustainable or manageable, but you're just continuing to reaffirm that it doesn't need to be that way, that simple steps can make a profound difference. And that's what I really love about the work you're doing and how much you're talking about this simplicity gratitude practice and how it trickles into all of these other facets of our health and our well-being, our happiness, and more. I would love to kind of move into talking a little bit about contributors to misery, loneliness, and what are those things in our society? You know, mental health is really a very complex topic. There are a lot of different facets to it. But at the end of the day, there are definitely things that contribute to certain pieces of the puzzle, like isolation, loneliness, misery. What are those in your opinion? And how do we just identify them a little bit more?
I believe that two main ones come to mind. One is comparison. When we compare ourselves to other people, it immediately brings down our own happiness level. We can feel like we're so happy with what we've got and appreciate everything, but then as soon as we compare, it just diminishes that. So learn, and it's a natural thing to compare. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. In fact, it's part of normal childhood development, social comparison theory, where we learn about our place in the world by comparison. But then around middle school, it starts to tip the scale where it works against us and makes us feel crummy about ourselves. So paying attention to when you're doing it, how it's making you feel, because it doesn't always have to be bad. Sometimes it can help you highlight what's important to you. So if you see somebody that has something that you don't have, and you have a certain feeling, whether it's jealousy or whatever it may be, it's kind of highlighting to you that that's important to you and what you can strive for. And it also shows you what's possible simply by it existing in the world. So it can actually serve as a motivator. It doesn't always have to be a bad thing, but for most people, it does bring happiness level down. So that's one. The next is taking things personally.
Yeah.
That our feelings are, there must be 100 times a day when each of us has the opportunity for having our feelings hurt. So it's natural to have our feelings hurt, but just working through it and recognizing that so often it's somebody else's issue going on, not anything that we have done, that we're all a product of our own histories, our past hurts, and what makes us who we are. So learning not to take things personally, the more that you can do that, truly the happier you will be.
So good. And I love that you're speaking about two very, very common hurdles that I think most people struggle with in some capacity, especially in the interconnected world we live in when we're shown highlight reels and we're shown massive success and we're shown these images of perfection. And it's so simple to really let your mind get into this place of comparing your life to everyone else's and feeling like for whatever reason you don't measure up or you're not good enough and things get interpreted in a different way, and it can really feel personal and it can really start to dig into your own sense of self-worth and identity and so much more. That kind of brings me to this next topic, which is kind of this realm of toxic positivity. And I know for me and for a lot of the clients and the women that I serve, when we get into these headspaces of feeling like we're comparing ourselves to something else, or we feel like our feelings are hurt in some way, or we're feeling like what we're experiencing in the world has all these levels of emotions, sometimes we get stuck or scared to really speak vulnerably about our experience or what we're actually going through. And so instead of doing that, we kind of play this role of, I'm just happy all the time and everything is fine. And I would love for you to speak about really what that side of the coin can do for our mental health.
Sure. Yes. If we don't pay attention and process and feel our pain, that's exactly what happens. It leads to toxic positivity, which backfires. That's not sustainable. So part of it is allowing, I believe the first step is recognizing your feelings and your emotional pain and giving yourself the time and space to feel. So if you're busy during the workday, if that's not the time to do it, just make sure before you go to bed that you have some time and space to process your feelings. And it doesn't always have to be a cognitive exercise. Even walking, there's research that shows that when we walk, it helps to process our emotions. And I know for personally that hiking and being out in the mountains and skiing is what truly was a huge component of healing the death of my fiance. So it doesn't always have to be cognitive, and also just human connection. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, and that takes courage. But when we do so, that's where the beauty of human connection is, when we are vulnerable and authentic with other people, not when we're trying to pretend that everything is okay. So it makes us feel good to have that human connection. And then it also gives us the opportunity to receive the support that we need rather
Yeah.
than pretending that everything's okay.
Yeah. And getting the support that we need is a huge piece to the overall puzzle. Like, you have hit the nail on the head over and over, that like the strongest predictor of happiness is human connection, and how we have to be finding ways to stay grounded in our own gratitude and what we're grateful for in our life, but then also like reaching out and making this effort to intentionally connect in whatever way that we can. Dr. Peggy, I cannot thank you enough for your incredible perspective on all of these things related to gratitude, mindset, mental health. Before we wrap up, I would love for you to share, for the person that's listening to this who wants to start to get into more of this positive psychology practice and really get grounded in gratitude, what would be the one simple thing you would tell them to do to increase their happiness?
To reach out to one person every day. Think about someone from your past, somebody in your present life, and be intentional about that being your goal for the day. Reach just one person and express your gratitude for that person.
Yeah, and that will not only change you, but it will also change them. And it's
Yes,
that reciprocated energy, like that is the gift. That is the gift. And I
absolutely.
love how you just simplify it. And it can really be that easy. It can really be that simple. It's just making that intentional choice.
Yes.
Can you quickly share, how can people find you if they want to listen to you, if they want to get connected, if they want to know more about your work? How can they connect with you?
Sure. I think the best way would be I have a free resource on my website to guide people through 5 daily exercises in gratitude that don't take more than 5 minutes a day. I call it the Grateful Day, and people can go to my website. It's drpeggydelong.com, and then the resource is /the Grateful Day. It's also under the resources tab on my website. So you can sign up for that, and then I will send you an email, one email a day, giving you that one exercise to practice to help you develop a gratitude practice.
Fantastic. And we will make sure that everything is linked in the show notes of this podcast, so you can connect with Dr. Peggy and get connected to her resources and learn more about how do you intentionally practice gratitude in your day and create more connection, create more happiness, and really nurture your well-being with this intentional way, because it really does make a difference for how you feel from the inside out. Dr. Peggy, thank you again for your time today. I'm so grateful for you.
Thanks for having me, Erin.
Of course. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I know balancing time and energy can be a challenge, and I'm so proud of you for listening in and investing in your wellness journey. I feel incredibly grateful to connect with you and for the opportunity to share more knowledge, stories, and encouragement related to all things wellness. I would love to hear how this podcast has served you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review on either iTunes or Spotify. Your support truly means the world to me and helps me reach more women just like you and me who are looking to transform their health from the inside out. Plus, when you share this episode with a friend, we invite more women in to learn alongside us. What a gift. Remember, knowledge is power, and the more we know, the better we can do. For ourselves, for our families, and our future. Well done on taking the step towards a healthier, happier you. Until next week, stay empowered and stay well.